happen.
Oh my gosh, I loved that. That was so fun. I was the interviewer instead of the interviewee, and David Schultz was the guinea pig for this one. And David, feel free to pitch in if I misrepresent you in any way. But so David is relearning the bass. He started learning the bass, as a youngster, and is getting back into it. And that's the hobby that he's got these days, is really wanting to get back into playing the bass. So I was sort of asking him, like, what is it that you love about that? What's so great? And we sort of started off talking about how a couple of things, like with the bass, it both holds the beat, right? Like it is rhythmic and it's fundamental to what the band is playing, but it also it gets its own riffs. It gets to hold a melody or a solo when it wants to, so it can kind of play both roles. You feel the bass, it's percussive, right? Like, so you hear the guitar, you can feel the guitar too, but you really feel the bass. And I loved also that, like, it's not the flashy lead, right? Like the bass is not, it's not the lead singer, it's not the lead guitarist, it's the bass, but you gotta have it. If you don't have a bass player, it's not a full band. Like, it's definitely not a full rock band or jazz band. So I was like, all right, so how does it make you feel, right, to be back in this and be that in that spot? And I love that you said a couple of things. One, you said it's frustrating because you don't want to learn it. You want to know how to do it, right? And you got to do the learning. You have to do the listening. You got to do the hard work. But it's also really exhilarating. And he talked about that sort of aspirational feeling of, like, I don't have to go play Wembley, but I'd love to be backyard jamming with people again, right? Like, it feels good. It's really satisfying. And then we got into this conversation about, so how do we translate this to kind of where we are, right? And I love this. He said, it's like we're transitioning from being the lead singer or the lead guitarist to being the bassist in the industry. We're not necessarily front and center anymore. And we talked about how AI is now the one who's standing in front doing this bit, AI's lead singing. But again, we're still completely integral. Like, this role as the bass player, right, is so fundamental, and it wouldn't be the same without it. And you can still hold your own. And, you talked to at the end about maybe not everybody's going to see you, but there's still a bunch of people in the audience who are absolutely there to see the bassist, right? Who are here to listen to that particular instrument, that particular line. So you're always going to have your people, and you're always going to have your role effectively, which I thought that was really good. And then the last thing that we talked about was, like, okay, so how do we take this into your next moment, like a design moment or whatever? Bass players tend to stand really close to the drums, because you got to be those two have to be like full on in sync all of the time. So maybe this is about, and I think you specifically said, building really good relationships with development, because we got to be really, really in sync with development, right? Like doing that mind meld kind of thing with them. And then we went off on what the band would actually look like, and AI is the front man, right? Engineering is probably the drums. Design gets to be the bass line, and then all the management consultants are our agent. We riffed on the whole band setup, but I thought it was just an awesome analogy for where we are. And I love that recognition of, it's a little painful to not get to be the lead all the time, but that it doesn't mean that they're not just absolutely still, you can't have a band without the bass. It's just not a thing. So anyway, thank you, Doug. It was